guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about everything that's been happening with Travis Scott and the Astroworld concert. Now, I originally wanted to talk about this a little bit earlier, but it seemed like the story just kept developing and that there were new things popping up seemingly every couple of hours, honestly, so I wanted to wait a second until at least a few days passed so we'd have a more complete version of the events at hand. Now, in this video, I am going to discuss a couple of things that have happened in the past with Travis Scott, but this is by no means an all-encompassing everything Travis Scott has ever done wrong. In light of what happened at Astroworld, a lot of these things are connected and related, and that's why I'm going to be bringing them up. So I'm sure the majority of you have heard about what happened at his Astroworld concert, where 8 people died, a crazy number of people injured, hundreds even, and every new development kind of brought to light a more disturbing facet of it all between the security or lack thereof, the non-communication between the fire department and the medics, just the way in which everything was unfolding. A lot of it was just unsettling and it made you question how any of this was okayed in the first place. So I have a couple of articles that I'm going to take pieces from. I'm going to link every article down below if you want to read all of them because there is a lot out there about what happened. Before I do that though, I did want to insert a couple of TikToks. Now the reason why I want to do that is because there was a main narrative going around initially where basically people were showing Travis Scott continuing his show even though people were warning his security or yelling at him that people were dying, that people were getting trampled, that people were overall unwell. And that was a dominating narrative that made him into the bad guy. That's not to say that I don't think he's still the bad guy. But then another TikTok came out, and I'll show you all of them, where it shows him essentially stopping singing and saying to security, hey, someone over there needs help.
We need somebody to help him. Somebody passed out right here. Somebody passed out right here. Hold on, don't touch him, don't touch him. Everybody just back up. Security, somebody help jump in real quick. Keep going, just keep it just right. Somebody jump in, come on, security, get in there, let's get in there.
Regardless of him stopping his show, I'll give you my opinion after, but I'm just gonna say just because he stopped the show for a second to tell his security or someone to go check, I still think there was little to no due diligence done on his part. I still think he is heavily guilty, and even if he did stop the show, it doesn't really change all that much to me, and I think a lot of people, because the result remained this tragedy, basically. So there was a woman named Madeline Eskins who is an ICU nurse who was at the festival, and basically she was asked how everything escalated, how it was that, you know, it went from being very crowded to suddenly people getting trampled to everything that happened. Like, how did it go from 0 to 100, basically? And she said that about 30 minutes before Scott took the stage, the crowd got more and more packed. All of a sudden, people were pressed up against each other, pushed forward and backward. As the timer got closer, it got worse and worse. Eskins added, I had a constant pressure on my chest. I was being squeezed. Right when he started performing his first song, I looked at my boyfriend and said, we have to get out of here. Once he started, all hell broke loose. All of what is to be 50,000 people ran to the front, compressing everyone together with the little air available, another concert goer, Alexis Govin, told CNN. Luckily, I have mosh pit experience and I'm 6 feet tall, so I could at least put my head up and breathe, but others were not so fortunate. So this kind of coincides with the TikTok before the concert even started. You could see how packed it was and how people basically could not move at all. So another thing that was happening is that there was a narrative that was going around about people being injected with drugs. So Police Chief Finner actually addressed this, saying that it's still unclear what exactly was happening with these alleged drugs, but what was found is that someone felt a prick in his neck and then they were administered Narcan, and apparently the medical staff did notice a prick that was similar to a prick you would get if someone was trying to inject you. So the drugs, narcotics narrative, I don't know, it's not really confirmed, but it seems like there is at least reason to believe that maybe something happened there with drugs as well. Very unsettling on top of everything else that we already know now. And speaking of Police Chief Finner, he actually posted, the Houston Police Twitter posted a statement about everything that occurred. Finner said, I met with Travis Scott and his head of security for a few moments last Friday prior to the main event. I expressed my concerns regarding public safety and that in my 31 years of law enforcement experience, I've never seen a time with more challenges facing citizens of all ages, to include a global pandemic and social tension throughout the nation. I asked Travis Scott and his team to work with HPD for all events over the weekend and to be mindful of his team's social media messaging on any unscheduled events. The meeting was brief and respectful, and a chance for me to share my public safety concerns as chief of police. As I've previously stated, our criminal investigation continues. We're asking for everyone to be considerate of the grieving families during this incredibly difficult time. Please continue to lift them up in prayer. So this was another part where I just had a lot of question marks in my head, because if the chief of police is that concerned and for seemingly nothing to really be done, as far as we know, clearly not enough was done. The security clearly was off between medics and general security in terms of keeping people safe and not getting trampled. Clearly not enough was done. So I'm just wondering if what Finner said fell on deaf ears, or if they had a false sense of security of like, oh, we got this, we're gonna be fine. But the fact that the chief of police would meet with you and tell you that they're worried, to me, if you're a responsible performer, you're going to really, really take that seriously and do more than the necessary to make sure that no one's going to pay for your negligence, basically. The next thing that I wanted to mention is that Travis Scott has a history of what you could only call negligent and bad behavior. There's a history of lack of safety at his shows. In 2017, Scott encouraged a concert goer in New York City to jump off a second floor balcony, remarking, I see you, but are you gonna do it? In 2019, during the second Astro World Festival, hundreds of people rushed metal barricades to break into the event. In 2015, the Chicago police arrested Scott at Lollapalooza after he allegedly urged fans to climb over security barriers and come on stage. And Scott actually pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct in 2018 for an incident at a Rogers, Arkansas concert the year prior. Local police said Scott encouraged people to rush the stage. These are just a few isolated events, but to me it says that there was no progression, there was no learning, because if you see that the first time that one of your events, something goes wrong, something that you're kind of inciting really, because if you're telling people to storm the crowd basically, or if you're telling them to push back past barriers, that's on you because you're encouraging that behavior. But aside from that, if you see that things are going wrong, if you see that people are getting injured, trampled, so on and so forth, why are you not learning from that? Why are you not actively taking steps to change that and make sure that that won't happen again? But here we see a pattern of continued negligence to change anything, and frankly, straight up irresponsibility, because to tell large crowds of people to like jump over barriers, to just like run around crazy. How do you do that with a clear conscience? I don't understand, especially considering that the victims, the ones who died and the victims of injuries, a lot of them were really young, some as young as 14. So how do you say that to kids and think that's okay? It's not okay to anyone, but especially children who might not know better. Another part of this tragedy is that there's a 22-year-old Texas A&M student who suffered multiple heart attacks and now isn't showing any brain activity after the deadly Astroworld concert, her family says. Again, this just shows just how dangerous it was. Then, on top of everything else, Travis Scott is pairing up, collaborating with BetterHelp to offer the victims, the attendees of Astroworld, mental health help. Now, if you've been on the internet for long enough, you know that BetterHelp has been shown as shady in multiple ways. So even with the best of intentions, BetterHelp, I don't think is really a valid solution. And in fact, a lot of newspapers are branding this as exploitative because basically he's being sponsored by a company to make up for his irresponsibility, but also to come off as, oh, I really care, you know, this is something I want to do to help people. When the reality is, if this has been a pattern for years, to me, this BetterHelp thing says nothing. There also was an announcement that he was going to pay for the funerals of the 8 victims. Again, to me, these are all empty gestures, and that might be a little cynical, but again, if since 2015 you have been having consistent safety problems, or you are actually egging people on to be unsafe, this is just to look better. This is like a PR stunt, basically. This is not genuine to me. I mentioned at the beginning that the Houston firefighters union actually complained about communications with medics hired by Astroworld because they wanted direct radio contact, but apparently the Astroworld team basically just gave them phone numbers, so there wasn't a direct line of communication. I'm in disbelief that firefighters and medics would not have a direct line of communication, especially via radio. It seems like such a basic thing that I frankly took for granted that there would have been some radio communication, because it just seems like the safest, most direct way to communicate in cases of emergencies like what exactly happened. It might have avoided a tragedy. It might have gotten the medics and firefighters to communicate more effectively and get people out more effectively. There's just a series of negligent points that I can't understand how they occurred, how nobody on the team would have thought of it, especially as a lot of outsiders have thought of this. You know, people like me who have no understanding of like event planning or anything like that know that there has to be a direct line of communication between everyone, security, medics, the firefighters. Everyone should have had a line directly to each other. Lastly, because now Travis Scott is under a certain level, a high level of scrutiny, to be honest, there have been videos surfacing of him saying homophobic things at his 2015 concert, and he was saying things such as, here is an example of things he said: you just sitting here looking like a bunch of, he can be heard saying in the video while some in the crowd appeared to cheer him on for using these slurs. Apparently he's apologized for using these slurs, but again, we just see a pattern of behavior that is frankly disgusting and disappointing. And all these quote unquote efforts that might be made, I just don't see them as genuine. I don't think they mean anything. Had he consistently tried to improve on his security, on the medics and everything, maybe then it would be more believable. But at this point, it's ridiculous, and I just don't know how someone would recover from something like that. But you guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always, and I'll catch you guys next time.